Yes, guys, and welcome back to your favorite time of the week. And it is your boys, Dave and Sean, again, bringing you another thrilling conversation. Shawnee, how are you keeping, sir?
Always good, mate. Oh, well, always good speaking to you. In life, generally, I'm not always good, but I'm good. Great to be back with the Flat Cap Army and the Irish Hotspur Army. Shout out to everyone who's watching. I hope everyone's keeping well.
Nah, it's good to hear that you're doing well. But look, Shawnee, let's get straight into it. Let's waste no time, my man. Look, there's a lot of discussion around the fan base at the minute, looking ahead to January, sort of, what do we need in January, which we're going to get onto. But I want to propose another question to you first. What sort of funds do you feel like is actually available in January for us to spend? Because we did spend, I think it was 212 million.8 pounds this last summer, Sean, on all of our acquisitions. So even if you take into the account that we sold Harry Kane for 100 million, you minus that off, there's still 180 million sort of, or 112 million net spend there. So what sort of money do you believe is available this January? Can we go straight into the market and start identifying players and bring them in? Or are we in a position where we have to sell before we can buy?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, mate. Notwithstanding, as much as I spend a lot of time looking through the accounts and things, it is a difficult one to know where we're sitting with regards accessible kind of liquidity. What I would say is, from a positive point of view, from a kind of glass half full point of view, I would say that a lot of that money that you're mentioning was already allocated from last January to Pedro Porro. I believe that's what you're including in that number.
Yeah, Pedro Porro and Kulu.
And Kulusevski. I think the net, if you take those players out because we already allocated them before, then wasn't anything like quite as much. What I would say is, when you look at the Daniel Levy comments in the fan forum that he did, and someone put it up on the screen, and he said that we basically spent 100 to 120 million every year for the last 5 years, and over that period of time, our average wage to turnover ratio is about 50%. And the average spend was 110, 120 million, which on a good year is about 25% of our turnover, which if you add those two together, you get to about 75%. That's 80%. And you know that FFP is coming down the track. Right now, you can't spend more than 90% on a simplistic ratio. Obviously, you can push things around with clever accounting like what Chelsea do. But in a nutshell, 90% last season, 80% this year, I think it is, or maybe next year, and 70% in the final year of the transition. And so, absent some clever accounting policies, I would say that we're already, when we spend about 120 million pound a year, that's kind of about there or thereabouts. And so I would expect something similar until Tottenham can make ends meet with the player trading that we never have done in the last 3 or 4 years. We spend a lot of money, and when they don't work out, we can't sell them. It limits what we can do. I don't think we're going to be selling too many more players. I would be amazed if Tottenham were to be able to spend anything more than a net 100 million, 80 million, something like that in January. Whether or not they want to do that business in January or keep their powder dry to a degree for the summer when it's easier to do business, you'd imagine that then next summer we'll also have more money. Plus, there'll be less legacy costs on our book if we can, write off the costs of Hugo Lloris and Dyer and those sorts of things. So I just think that until Tottenham get to a point where they can start to liquidate some of their assets that are on the kind of player trading side, and that's going to take a while for the youth team to mature. Not every one of those players is going to become a first team player for Tottenham, but some of them will carry value that we can liquidate. Until we start to get more from selling assets, then I think Tottenham will always be a little bit strangleheld by that reality. And it doesn't matter that we're bringing in 600 million or 500 million, whatever it's going to be in revenues. I think ultimately we're still going to be a little bit frustrated with the budgets that are going to be fully available. Like I say, I think it's going to stay around 150 million quid a year, 160 million quid a year until that player trading side can add to our net differentiator. So in January, personally, that's a long-winded answer, mate, but I think all those reasons, I think, expect the similar sorts of money as we've been spending before, 70, 80 million, 90 million, something like that.
Well, put in the comments, let us know, is that enough for the positions you think we require this January to be able to keep the momentum and hopefully keep ourselves in a title race? But look, Sean, I do agree with what you're saying. I think, sort of being able to sell players has been a huge problem of Tottenham over the past, and especially last few years. But I do think it's a problem that's set to continue. When you look at a lot of the players that we're talking about to sort of get out of here to bring in players to create that squad. You're talking about the likes of your Setsy Young's contract coming to an end, the likes of your Fraser Forrester, Lloris's, Dyer's, Davies. A lot of them contracts are up in the next year or two. So, that reduces their value even more. So I'm
Yeah,
not sure.
they'll be amortized, and also the players that we do liquidate. Sorry to interrupt. The players that we do liquidate, you're going to see the back of Hugo Lloris, hopefully the back of Eric Dyer at some point in the next 18 months. Ndombele will be off the books as well. They're very expensive, or Ndombele specifically, very expensive mistakes. Hopefully, we can put them behind us, and then in an ideal world, you're going to start to see a little bit more like smart decision making around who you hire, not just thinking about the physical attributes, but also whether they're mentally strong enough for what's required. But I think we're not quite through that quagmire of nonsense yet, Dave. Sorry, mate.
No, I agree with that. I think it's set to continue for another year, maybe two at least, before maybe we get to the point where we're starting to see, money coming in for players that we're letting out. I definitely think it's set to continue for a year or two. You're absolutely right on that, Shawnee. Look, also a lot of the transfer rumors going into January. I see a lot of rumors for players abroad. But if you remember, coming to the close of the window in the summer, even though we were seeing a lot of links from players abroad, those of us who looked at the squad situation, we knew deadline day was all going to be about homegrown players that qualify for a homegrown situation registration in the league. Do you think that could be the case entering into January as well? That we do have to look at players that qualify for that homegrown spots.
I'll be honest, mate. I'm not too over that whole side of the kind of the conversation. Maybe you can educate me more on this one. But I think we've got so many youth team players that are coming through next season. If some of the players that are out on loan can come back and join us, then maybe the youth team situation, or sorry, the homegrown situation isn't that bad. We're going to be getting rid of a couple of players like I said before, Hugo Lloris, who wouldn't have counted the foreign quota, and Eric Dyer. I don't know. I'll be honest, mate. I'm like, you tell me. Are we? Where do we sit with the homegrown situation right now?
Well, look, when I look through the squad, you've got Brandon Austin. He's probably on his way out the door. Not long left on his contract. Fraser Forrester, not long on his contract. He's probably out the door. Ben Davies, after the game against Fulham, is his Tottenham career done? We need to bring in a left back. Do we have to be able to ship him out? That takes him off the homegrown quota when he's registered. Ryan Sessegnon, if you're looking to cash on him, he's homegrown. You have to replace him. We're not blessed, Sean, right throughout the team. Brennan Johnson, of course.
Who would be left? Who would be left?
Got James Madison and Ollie Skip as well. So I do think, if we do let go of a homegrown player, I think he has to be replaced, Sean.
Is that maybe one of the reasons why players like Calvin Phillips are heavily linked?
Like
more
Kelly
so
still being thrown around, like Kelly.
Lloyd Kelly, 100%. Yeah. So you think that we're going to have to sacrifice or settle for players that are slightly less desirable? We had this conversation earlier. You don't think Calvin Phillips is worth anything like what Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is, but you said a few times now, if it wasn't for the fact that he's English, we wouldn't be paying attention to him. So is that because we have to look into the homegrown and we just don't have enough, and the youth team that's emerging are not ready yet? Essentially, is that your idea?
Look, I think when you look at it, you look into the youth team. Do we have a left back to be able to come up and go in behind, slot in behind a Doji? No, we don't. So we will have to dip into the market for that, which means Ben Davies out, has to be a homegrown player in. I think that's why someone like Lloyd Kelly, who can double up as a centre back as well, is still being touted around. You look into midfield, if the club's idea is maybe looking at Ollie Skip, potentially sending him out on loan so he doesn't stagnate, you're going to have to replace him for a homegrown. So that's probably why you're seeing the links to Calvin Phillips. And I think that is an area where we probably will have to approach the market first. I think we'll have to look at areas where, to back up his homegrown players, let them go, bring in a homegrown player. The only way you sort of be able to look in foreign markets is if you do let someone like Lascelles go, or you can cash in on a Richie, or the big popular debate: do you keep Højbjerg? Do you not? If you let him go, but I think it depends on what we get out the door. If you sell a foreign player, I think you'll see a foreign player come in. If you sell a player that meets their homegrown registration, likewise, I think you'll see that come in. I don't think
is that maybe why
maneuver.
Is that maybe why players like Ivan Toney are going to be such gold dust, such hot property in January? He's coming to the end of his contract at Brentford. He's just going to come back in from his ban. And there's going to be several teams that are looking. Obviously, he's a number 9, which are in short supply generally and in massive demand. There's a huge. Sorry, I forgot these things are popping up.
I love it.
There's a huge demand for number 9s, but when you factor in the fact that he's English and can count towards the homegrown quota, do you see Tottenham going in for an Ivan Toney if there's a bidding war between Arsenal and Chelsea for him? Do you think Tottenham also look for him?
I don't think Daniel Levy doesn't like bidding wars. I don't think he'll enter into one, to be honest with you, because, look, you'll end up paying crazy money for him if you're going into a bidding war with them two clubs. You look at Arsenal outbid Man City for Declan Rice. You look at Chelsea outbid a lot of Premier League teams last season for stars that they wanted. So, we just don't have that sort of money to throw around in January or compete with them on that basis.
Or an Ollie Watkins, maybe. Do you think that is there any chance? I guess my question, more rounded around to you, is there any chance that Tottenham are going to look for one of the key positions that we need help in and not settle for an average player that just happens to be English, but actually go big for a big name English player to help settle the solution to the problem that we have, but also settle the solution to the homegrown problem that you're suggesting that we're going to have in the next year?
Look, personally, what I would prefer Tottenham to do, Sean, is go and identify the targets, bring them in here, and adjust the squad accordingly to be able to fit them in. That's what I would like to do. But look, I think the reality is, you also got to look at what players can we get out. Is there going to be interest for the players that we want to sell? There might not be that. So what do Tottenham do then in that situation? But look, I still think the likes of Adarabioyo or Lloyd Kelly will be on the books maybe for the back line. But then again, I don't think Dyer qualifies as homegrown. So if you let him go, maybe you could look across Europe to bring in that centre back and promote a Dorrington or a Phillips and register one of them as one of your homegrowns. Midfield, I think, look, I don't rate Calvin Phillips. I think if he was Irish, Calvin or Phillips, or if he was, Danish, Calvin Filipino or whatever you want to call him, I don't think, there would be as much interest in the guy. I'll be honest, from what I've seen of him, I've never been impressed. I don't think if we bring him in, I don't think he starts in that midfield. I don't think he gets in. And I think when he comes in as a backup, especially if it was against low block teams, he's the sort of guy that's going to frustrate me and piss me off, because when I see him for England, he does a lot of sideways passing, a lot of backwards passing. And England's biggest problem maybe at competitions and tournaments, especially the last one he played in, was progressing that ball into the front area and actually, using the prowess of that front line that England possess and the attacking players. But you can never do that with someone like Calvin Phillips in the team if he doesn't want to progress the ball forward to these guys to be able to exploit that. I just think someone like Calvin Phillips is too safe for Tottenham. I don't want him. I don't see what he adds. So I do think maybe go in and look across Europe and see who we can get for that position. But look, this January is going to be a quagmire. I don't think it's going to be as straightforward as many people think it is, Sean.
No, I completely agree, mate. I completely agree. It's traditionally difficult anyway because no one wants to do business. They haven't got the time to reciprocate and find what they want. If there's always that Mexican standoff scenario, we don't want to buy before we can sell. We don't want to sell before we can buy. Most squads are already chock-a-block anyway, so that again amplifies the issue there. And what results is people asking for unreasonable money for the sorts of players that teams like Tottenham are going to need. And when you have a Daniel Levy who always puts things back, the one thing I don't want to see happen in January is for what's happened in the last 2 January windows, which is deadline day deals. Tottenham have done good business. Bentancur, Pedro Porro, and Kulusevski are 3 key players for our first team and 3 signings that happened in the last window, but they weren't there for the entirety of January. So you're waiting for the last minute, and I hope that Daniel Levy, if it's true that he's stepping back from the negotiations, and Scott Mann, and whether it's Johan Langer or Paratici or whoever it is that's doing the business, or this new guy Mackenzie that might be coming in, like, we don't, as long as whatever we're doing it early. When you add in the fact that this particular January you've also got the African nations and you've got the Asia Cup, it adds another variable. And I just hope that Tottenham do for once what we would all like to see them do more often, which is identify their targets in November and December, or already have them identified for whatever that's worth. And on January the 1st or January the 2nd that you see these players coming in. In terms of the homegrown stuff, yeah, look, I completely agree. I mean, I personally think Calvin Phillips is a better player than I think you're giving him credit for. That's just my personal take. I think he's a really good player. I remember him at Leeds. I think at Manchester City, it's been a terrible experience for him. And those sorts of things happen. You know, sometimes it's horses for courses. Sometimes it's players for systems and players for managers. Maybe he's put on a bit of weight. Maybe Pep Guardiola doesn't see the value, or maybe there's people that are emerging at Manchester City, like Rico Lewis, or whatever, that are kind of just that level above. Whatever, it is what it is. I think Calvin Phillips is a good player. Do I think I want him in over Pierre Højbjerg? Well, that's a different conversation, because I think Højbjerg has really stood up to the test of being a rotation player, and his professionalism has shone through. And I think that it's changed my mind a little bit about sacrificing him. But in terms of the homegrown, I don't know, mate. There's not that many players out there that are English that I think are available that would actually make us better. So I really hope that homegrown is an issue that we have to really worry about in January.
Look, I hope not, Shawnee. I hope not, because look, before I would have been okay with some of these youngsters coming in, being you know, what it was supposed to be was a season where we sort of just get our feet in under the table and stuff like that. However, it hasn't turned out like that, so I'm sort of adjusting what I would like in January according to where we are right now. Yeah. Exactly, and I just think, you know, where if we can get players in January who can come in and hit the ground running, ready to go, that are experienced, that have that know-how and stuff like that, it really will help, you know, keep us in the title race even longer, rather than promoting a couple of youngsters. But, you know, with them youngsters, next year is, like I've always said, is where they really should be looking at, even maybe in and around the FA Cup, where you might see some of these guys play. Some of them are already training with the first team. But now that we're in a title challenge, we want to maintain that. I do think we need to sign established players ready to go, just to fill out that squad a little bit more and try and get it on the par, you know, or anywhere close to where Man City or Liverpool or Arsenal are at in terms of strength in depth. But I also, on your point,
for you though, mate. Sorry, finish your point, mate. Sorry, I've got a question. I was
just going to say just quickly on what you were saying about, you know, January and getting them in nice and early. If I'm correct, I think there's a bit of a break in January, a 13-day period or 12-day period break in January. So also then it gives Postecoglou a chance to work with them on the training pitch during that period, you know, get them up to speed with the tactics, what we expected them coming into this group, this environment, this culture and stuff like that. So I do agree with you. It would be nice to get them in early this time around, Johnny. Sorry, what are you going to say, lad?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, what, you know, you're talking about Liverpool, Manchester City. How do we close that gap? You know, I think that Manchester City have got, I think it's fair to say, you know, world-class, or if not top-class players twice over in every position. Liverpool have got weaknesses in the DM role and in the back line. I think it's probably our strongest area. I think that we need to focus up the top end more. But the strength, in terms of the strength in depth versus the how do we take this opportunity? You mentioned, like, you know, you're resetting expectations because all of a sudden we're in a position to maybe do something this year. So the difference between the strength in depth argument versus the doing something this year argument requires a switch in priority. If you want to do something this year, then yes, you might need more strength in depth in the back line. I think everyone agrees with that anyway. But we've got relative strength in depth at the top end, but we don't necessarily have the right variety or the right kind of recipe up there. That's the area of the pitch where we're struggling to put teams to the sword. So what's the priority? Is it about improving the strength in depth and therefore focusing on things like the defense, the left back? Do you go, because you're only going to get probably two players in January. Let's be honest, it's January. So do you go for something like a centre back and or a left back to play deputy to Udogie? But in so doing, you're not improving the first team. You're just improving the options when the first team isn't quite the first team. Or do you go to the top end of the pitch and bring in someone that's going to cost probably a lot more money out of the budget, but that can improve the first team right now? But in so doing, you're then running the vulnerability risk of an injury in one of those places that you haven't strengthened towards the south end of the team. So it's a bit of a kind of conundrum in my mind.
Look, Sean, I would like to see us do both, to be honest with you. I think, look, maybe one more in the back line. That's why I think Lloyd Kelly rumors ain't going away. Double up as left back and centre back. I can see us maybe going for something like that. Although,
are you happy with him?
No, I'm not. I would be happy with an Adarabeo, although, off the back of an operation, is he going to be ready to hit the ground running? That's another debate. But someone like Adarabeo, I'll be happy with. And if we could go and find another left back, I'll be happy with that. But let's not forget Reguilón's coming back. Does he slot in there and then shift on Ben Davies? Does he not? That's maybe, something to speak about.
Is he coming in? Is he coming back in January or is he coming back in the summer?
No, January. January's only on loan until January. So it'll be interesting to see sort of what happens there. But then, look, I do think we need another striker. And I know people are saying, Dave, you just won't let it go. I'm not going to let it go because although Son has stepped up, we need that extra firepower. When Kane was out injured, what did everyone say? Son stepped up to take down goals. Well, what if Son gets injured? Or what do we do when he's missing for, the Asian games and he's missing for some games? Two or three games on the bounce, losing points could very easily derail you in a title race like this with the likes of Arsenal, City, and Man Liverpool. So we can't afford that. Look, I really like Kaleo Feliz, but is he ready right now to step in and bag a couple of goals? I'm not so sure. So I do think we need someone else to chip in there, Shawnee, behind Sonny. I think the wingers, I hear what you're saying, but I do think maybe with a couple of tweaks and changes, you could get it right. But I want someone else to back up to Son. Because if he gets injured or he goes to the Asian games, and who's going to score goals up front? Because no one else is.
Right, but the question for me though, so I agree with you. I think our most, even with the injuries that we've got to Perisic and Solomon, and I think Solomon's going to be back for January for what it's worth, from what I've read, right? He's recovering sooner from his operation, so he might be an option. A lot of people are saying we need a winger. A load of people are talking about Williams or, Antonio Nusa, all these sorts of young upstarts. And I'd love to get one or two of them in because I think that they're brilliant. But when you look at the area of the pitch where we have our most amount of options, even for me, even now with the injuries to Perisic and Solomon, I still think the width is there. I just don't think we've seen enough of Brennan Johnson yet. We haven't seen anything of Brian Hill yet. I think Richarlison can do a job, and I think that Kulusevski absolutely has value. Just he's frustrating if you're looking at him and judging him just on his direct role, and you get frustrated by his one-dimensional approach. So if you're looking for an area that you don't really need to improve, it's the wings. Dave, if you're going to spend big money on a striker, because I agree with you that you need support in that realm, and if you're making the argument that the wingers, we got enough options there, but you definitely need to go and get someone to support Sonny, then because of the lack of demand, or sorry, the lack of supply and the increased demand for those sorts of players, even for kind of average nines that are out there, you're going to pay the lion's share of the budget. And are you going to be able to convince a top level number 9 to come in to sit behind Sonny when other clubs are going to be able to say, like a Chelsea, are going to say, look, you're the final piece of the jigsaw for Chelsea, right? You're going to guarantee minutes, whereas at Tottenham, you're going to have to fight for them. And even if you can find that player to come in and you want him to start, then does that push Sonny back out to the left where you're not going to see the best of him? So for me, the ability to identify and convince a good number 9 to come in is fraught with sacrifices. You're either sacrificing your budget, you're either sacrificing Sonny in his best position, or you're sacrificing the quality of the 9 that you really want to get on a 4-year contract. I really think that it's a really difficult problem to solve for, that needs to be solved for, but I don't know what the right solution is, and I'd love to get your take on it.
Do you know what, Sonny? It's a hard one because, look, I don't really want to move Son out of the middle either. But I do think there could be a world where, for instance, some of the low block teams, sometimes, although, Son is scoring goals, a lot of the game, he's not really involved until someone creates that moment for him. And as we know, Son is a creator as well. I do think it's just about having different options. If you want to bring on that big man up front or that striker, bring him on. If the left winger ain't working out, move Sonny out there for a little period during the game and see if you can get any joy that way. For me, it's just about having different options across that front line. Look, a striker, the right striker is going to be hard to get, but I do think we need it. You look at someone like Newcastle, right? They've got Isaac and Wilson. I don't think there's any reason why we can't have Son and someone else. Right now, we've got Son and Richarlison, but look, Richarlison just ain't scoring the goals. We gave him a bit of a chance this season. Even though he's getting chances, he ain't taking them. And I don't think he will up front either, if to be able to carry Son's load up front. So I do think, I don't know, Sean, it's a big problem. And it's a problem I've been speaking about since pre-season with this front line. I would like to see a left foot on a left side and a right foot on a right side. And play like that. I want to see what that looks like, because I'm convinced if we just made them switches, I think we'd look so much more better. I think we'd look so much more fluid. I think we'd create a lot more chances as well, because right now we're playing with inverted wingers, inverted fullbacks, and centre midfields that are all keeping the centre of the park blocked up.
Narrow. Yeah.
When the ball gets turned over, that's fantastic, right? It means they're not just running straight down the middle. I'm okay with that. But when we get the ball and we're on the ball, especially against these low block teams, we need wingers that want to hug the touchline and want to use that space out there to beat their man and try and make something happen. Right now, against low block teams, everyone wants to cut back inside with the ball. And all you're doing is just letting them jog from side to side and playing into their exact game plan the way they wanted you to play going into them games. And for me, I just think it's about just having that different options. And look, I do hear what you're saying. Look, we'll leave this one to the comments. So I'll get your thoughts on it as well, Sean. But, people in the comments, let me know what's more of a priority, having the right people to create or having a striker to finish off. Let us know what you think we need in the
Yeah, as the conversation started, though, just to add to that kind of comment section interaction, also, is the priority at the back, where you're not going to be buying for first team improvements, you're buying for squad depth in the event of first team injuries, versus spending a lot of your money right now on players that can come in and help at the top end. And look, when you look at, like, you've got Veliz, who, for what it's worth, I know he's come on and had minutes ahead of schedule, which is great, training very well. But from what we know of him, he is an aerial threat, similar to Richie, but we don't have a guy who puts the ball into the box. Yeah. And I don't necessarily think that crossing balls from deep is really part of Ange ball naturally. And look, to your point, we have inverted wingers who want to come inside. But if you actually think about how many of the goals we have scored, Dave, over the last several games have been from getting to the byline and crossing it back. We did Kulusevski against Arsenal. Oh, sorry, Sonny against Arsenal. We did. Kulusevski got one. Who did Kulusevski get one against? Bournemouth, right? You did, yeah. Mickey van der Ven at Luton.
Johnson for Son against Palace.
Like, I'm sure there's more as well. So many of our goals are FIFA settings at the moment, where you're just playing FIFA and you get it down the byline and then you exit across and then you just smack it in. So many of our goals are doing that. And yet we don't have wingers who naturally want to get to the byline. So if we're already doing it when the players don't want to do it naturally, how many more goals are we going to score if we actually put people on the width that want to get to the byline and cut the ball in? It's going to be, for me, it's our greatest source of goals, and yet our team isn't set up to support that methodology for scoring. So for me, I think that it's a massively difficult area, a difficult solution to solve, especially with if you do go down the path of getting the 9 in, then what does that mean for Sonny? I take your point about Newcastle, but most teams have got an out-and-out number 9 whose place is secure. Harry Kane has been our guy for the previous 10 years, and it was difficult to find someone to come in behind him because they knew they weren't going to get the minutes. Now, if your Sonny's the guy, he's the second highest goal scorer in the Premier League, and you bring someone else in behind him, you're either going to bring in someone that isn't that much better than what you already have in Richarlison or in Veliz, or you're going to bring in someone that's better who wants to take that place, and then you're going to push Sonny, who's one of our best players this season, back to a position that doesn't suit him anymore. So I think that it's a very difficult square to circle.
I just think when I look at a lot of the top teams in the Premier League, you've got City with Haaland, and if he's never not fit, you'd play Alvarez up there. With Arsenal, they've got Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus. With Newcastle, they've got Wilson, they've got Isak. With Liverpool, down the years, they've had Firmino, and although I didn't rate argue, the fucker scored every time he came in and played. Right now they've got Darwin Núñez, but they've also got Cody Gakpo who can play there if needed. And I just think I would like to have that second option. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility to be able to have it. But Sean, I want to ask you, because I agree with you on the whole winger scenario as well. I'm just trying to work out, what do we need more of? But like I said, I agree with you. Played left foot on the left side who wants to get down to the byline, same as the right footer, would look so much better. But the reason why that's not happening is that down to players preferring to play that way so that they can cut inside and get a lot more shots and add more goals to their game, which is a bit more selfish in my opinion. Or is that Ange Postecoglou that doesn't want to make that change?
I don't know, mate. Option C in that conversation is whether it's by design by Ange Postecoglou. We don't know. Like if I was Ange Postecoglou and I've instructed the players to get to the byline, and yet I've seen Decky 7-10 times a game do the entire opposite of the instruction, then I would be frustrated as Ange Postecoglou. Yet he continues to play him on the right, and Decky continues to do what presumably he either has or hasn't been asked to do. And so when you see both the wingers cut in all the time, you start to think maybe we are presuming to know what Ange wants from Ange Ball because of what Ange Ball used to look like at Celtic. But maybe Ange has changed his tactic a little bit and actually is asking the players to cut inside, or is okay with them doing it. Otherwise, you wouldn't see these players continuing to play and continuing to not be called out and continuing to do it. If there was an issue, they would have, like after game week 2, Ange would have said, like, stop doing that, Decky. Do what, like, get to the byline, you're good enough. And then if Decky continued to not do it, then he wouldn't have been playing so much. So I think that there might be option 3, which is that it's okay with Ange for him to do that for both of those guys, because Richie does it as well, as does Manor Solomon when Manor Solomon was playing before the injury. The only player that we've had that plays on the left or the right that gets to the, you can't say the same for, I don't think we've seen Brennan Johnson take a player on, really. So the only player in the Tottenham squad that's played in the right or left, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, that has actually taken a player onto the byline is Perisic.
Yep.
So I don't know what the I don't know whether it's by design or whether it's frustrating for Postecoglou, but you have to kind of summarize and think that if it continues to happen, then either the players are disobeying the orders, which I don't believe, or Postecoglou is okay with what we're doing.
Look, I'll look at it a little bit differently. I think Postecoglou has had to adjust constantly up in the forward line this season. Compared to the defense, the midfield, and the goalkeeper, he hasn't been able to roll out a consistent trio all season. Pre-season, I know he said he was planning without Harry Kane, but he would have also been planning with Harry Kane, and that would have been plan A. The plan without Harry Kane is plan B. So he's had to pull Sonny off the wing, where Sonny was playing sort of on the wing pre-season. He's pulled him into midfield. Then also you've lost Perisic, you've lost Solomon to injury. Brendan Johnson has picked up an injury at times. Brian Gill has been out injured a lot. So that leaves us with very limited options. So I think now that we're getting players back, will we see it changed up a little bit more? It'd be interesting to see. I think it'd be very interesting to see. But look, I think Postecoglou's frustrated by it as well. He wouldn't have said it before the Palace game if he wasn't. You look at the amount of chances we created. We create a hell of a lot of chances, but they're not very clear-cut chances, in my opinion. And compared to some of the chances that Celtic were playing, even sometimes they were playing low-block teams, they were still able to put 4 or 5 at times by some of these teams because they were creating a lot more clear-cut chances than what we are now. And I do think he is slightly frustrated with that front three. I think it could be a lot better. I think it could be a lot more potent. But now that we're getting options back, it'd be interesting to see whether he switches things up a little, Shawnee.
Let me ask you, I got 2 questions for you, mate. One is, look, Harry Kane, we did most of our business before Harry Kane was sold. I think we only did Brennan Johnson after it, right? If you could go back in time, would you rather have not signed Brennan Johnson, kept Harry Kane if Bayern Munich didn't pony up the right money at the last minute, even though it was under duress, even though you'd have a Harry Kane that didn't want to be here and a chairman that was expecting Bayern Munich to pay the final fee or whatever else. So you have no Brennan, you still have Harry Kane going into the last year of his contract, not knowing what was going to happen. And it would also have materialized that then, given that scenario played out, we probably would have very little money, if any money at all, for the January window to get reinforcements. Would you rather the situation as it is, where you hope that there's money to go and get a centre back or a left back or a dual, utility player and maybe a forward, but no Brennan Johnson, but you still have Harry Kane? Or would you rather the situation as it is, where you do have the options to go again in January?
I'll be honest, I'd rather have kept Harry Kane, because I think if we keep Harry Kane, I think with the options we've already got in that forward line, I think we make work. With Harry Kane, we know he's going to guarantee you 20-odd goals a season. Then you add Son, you add Maddison to that. I think, you create more, everyone scores a little bit more. I think then you don't even need to talk about signing in that area, and you're literally just looking at maybe a centre-back or a left-back, and you could raise that through selling an Ollie Skip or someone like that who you could get cash for. I would much rather have, be in the situation of having Harry Kane and just focusing on the one area, which is just a bit of reinforcement in the back line. Because, look, realistically, Sean, I think you're going to see a lot more teams. The longer we stay on top, a lot more teams are going to take the pragmatic approach against us. And if we don't get that front three right, that's what will come back and stop us winning this league. Goals wins you games, clean sheets win you leagues. We're keeping clean sheets. Right now we're scoring goals, but there will be a period where that'll dry up a little. So for me, I would rather have kept Kane, because I don't think it would be a problem. I don't think we'd be talking about right now.
All right. So on what you just said, clean sheets win you leagues. What's the most important? I'll go back to the same question. All right, what is the most important, but number one priority, head and shoulders above everything else on January the 1st? Is it someone that ensures that our defense can continue to keep clean sheets or concede less than we're scoring, but not improve the first team by bringing in someone like a Tosin or whoever, Lloyd Kelly, or insert whatever name you want, but it's not going to change the first 11 backline? Is that more important than bringing someone in who's going to be able to create more chances at the top end of the pitch?
Look, I think they're both equally as important, Sean. I just think right now we've got 2 problems, and if we want to be able to maintain a title challenge, I think you've got to do both. It can't be one or the other, because doing one or the other will ultimately come back to, it'll leave you short come the end of the season, in my opinion.
I get it.
Look, clean sheets and having that
which one is the most important, though? What's the most important? I'm putting you on the scales now. What's the most important one we need?
It's hard, because I love goal scorers, lads, Sean. I absolutely love them. I worship them. But
I know
what's caused me the most pain the last few years, the most heartache, the most stress, put me on blood pressure tablets and everything else, was that backline. So, based on my own health, Sean, I'll go with that backline because look, the way I see it, right, you've got a good solid backline. It'll always keep you in a game. That's why teams try and set up pragmatically, because it'll always keep them into a game for a certain period. Then it's just about, can you take that one chance? But I don't want to be that team. I want us to have both. I want us to be able to keep clean sheets and score goals. But yeah, I would say probably.
Could you make the argument then that you also need a backup goalkeeper? Is that something that needs to be handled soon? If Vicario goes down injured,
I think we look at that in the summer for sure. I think we get a backup goalkeeper this summer. Fraser Forster's contract will be up. That'll probably be him gone. Hugo Lloris's contract will be up. That'll be him gone.
If you lose Vicario, though, you lose Vicario to an injury, he dislocates his elbow like Hugo did 2 seasons ago. Season's over, right? So is his backup not just as important as Van de Ven's? I know it's less likely that he gets an injury than a Van de Ven or a Romero, but the drop off, because as much as I thought Foster did okay in periods last season, he's like, the drop off is steep, right?
Look, I think the biggest drop off, Shawnee, is in terms of how we play, right? We've seen against Fulham, Fraser Forster, he just doesn't have that passing ability out from the back. And a lot of times when other players were looking at Fraser Forster to, relieve a bit of pressure on themselves, he ended up pumping it long.
Yeah.
Hugo Lloris used to that. We're beyond that now. Vicario, you see, as cool as a cucumber. And he's one of the biggest reasons he doesn't get enough praise. He makes 100%. Big saves in big moments to keep us in games. But we would not be playing this style of football if we didn't have the right player in goal to be able to transition that ball out from the back, that if we needed to, as defenders, they can pass it back to him, knowing that if they move into another position, no matter where they move to, he can find them. He's a very, very important cog to this system. We're talking about playing football out from the back. Not only him, having Van de Ven and Adoji as well. It's important that we have players that are comfortable on the ball to suit this system, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think
it's be hard to find a good, backup in this market for him. I think that's more of a summer job.
I agree, and you got to pray that he gets injured. But I'd call it out that if he does get injured, then the impact of losing Vicario is arguably just as meaningful as losing a Maddison or a Bissouma or a Romero or a Sonny or a Van de Ven.
Yeah. Look, I totally agree with you. I mean, look how many times Van de Ven and Romero sometimes, or even some of the midfielders, if under pressure, they'll give it back to Vicario for him to hold it, to relieve a bit of pressure so that we can sort ourselves out and re-go again. You're absolutely spot on, Sean. I fully agree with that. But look, I think that brings us to the end of the conversation. Really enjoyed this one today.
Shame. I was enjoying it. We can keep going.
We're already 45 minutes long, Shawnee.
Oh, fair enough.
Already 45 minutes long. But look, hopefully you've enjoyed this sort of discussion on all things January transfer window. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below on what we have discussed. How much money do you think is available for us to spend in January? Do we have to go homegrown before we can look at other European markets, just like the end of the transfer window in the summer? And what positions do you want filled this January? But Shawnee, where can people find you, my great man?
Spurs Talk Show, mate. Yeah, if you happen to be Korean and you'd like to listen to the Spurs Talk Show in Korean, you can find me at Spurs Talk Show Korean. I don't know what that looks like but you type it into that language. But anyway, that's probably for the insignificant few. Yeah, Spurs Talk Show. Yeah, I take my dog out every day, and if you haven't already found it, then like, subscribe, and all that stuff as well. Appreciate you, Dave. Love you, mate. Thanks for having me. So always a good time.
No, the pleasure's all mine, Shawnee. We have these great conversations. We don't ever know which way they're going to go from the beginning. We just throw a few topics out there and just run our mouths for a little while. I really do enjoy streaming with you, though, my man. But everybody, please get over, check out the Spurs Talk Show, the famous, walks with Bugsy. You got to get on them. Also, those who do go to games, check out and look out for Sean after every home game. If you want to go and have your say on all things Tottenham or what you've just witnessed in the previous 90 minutes. So please get on over there and support Sean over at Spurs Talk Show. Also, give him a big up in the comments on the chair as well. A lot of different opinions around the community on it. Some think it's an eyesore. Me personally, I actually like it. I think it's very Big Brother vibe. I really do like it. Let us know in the comment section what you think of Sean's chair as well.
100%. I'm an armchair supporter. Let's be honest. At the end of the day, I'm an armchair supporter. So I thought, why not get an armchair to show my support?
Do you know what, lad? When I first seen it, I was like, do you know what? We're all mugs. He's got the right idea. He's got a proper big comfy chair there, and we're all sitting in these dingy yokes. You know, the fact that we're in them for so long, you're right to go with the comfort, lad.
100%, mate. 100%. Not only like the real reason why I bought them is because I'm too big of a lad and I've jumped up too many times, jumped backwards watching football. I've got a big TV here, so I watch like European games or whatever's going on, and I realized that like office chairs are not for me. They're not comfortable enough, and they haven't got the kind of structural integrity to handle someone like myself bouncing back. But you go and get a nice armchair, this thing ain't moving. I can throw myself around and it's absolutely fine. So I hope that this guy is going to be my partner for the next, at least a year, because I've gone through 3 chairs in a year. So I hope this one's around for a while at least, you know.
And look, that brings me on to the last thing. If there is any sponsor out there that make chairs for big boys like myself, please get in contact. Let me know, we'll work something out, we'll promote you or, let me know, give me a cheap discount and I'll definitely be on it. But look, we also need to get Shawnee, I'm thinking maybe a footstool or, a sort of massage thing behind just to add to it. So, let me know in the comments what
I'm going to get some go faster things. I'm going to get some lights. I'm going to get some accessories up here around the back here. Nice big cushion. Nice. This thing's not done. This is the start, not the finish of the chair saga. So
you know what I'm dying for game day? Do you know them hats with the drinks and the straws? I'm dying to get one of them for game day and stuff. Yeah,
amazing.
Just sitting on streams, thirsty, But honestly, that's it from us, guys. Smash that like button. In the big Ange we trust. Come on, you Spurs. And the most important motto this year: we
never stop. Come on.
Everywhere we go.